Spano, everyone from Six Nations Territory. Welcome and thanks for joining us today. Before we dive into the scholarships and bursaries details, please note this session will be recorded and you will get an email of the full replay. So you can sit back, take some notes, and focus on the presentation without missing a single detail. My name is Patty Dockstader Hill, and I'm joined today by Talia Bomberry, and who will lead us in the presentation. We are both bursary and scholarship officers here at Six Nations and at the Inspire office. And we're incredibly excited to guide you through and how to submit a strong bursary and scholarship application. Our goal today is to give you a clear advantage in the application journey, and you will learn how to submit a strong application. Once the presentation is complete, or we're going through the presentation, you could submit your questions in the Q&A, which is at the top. And you can, we'll answer them all at the end when we have a Q&A session. So our agenda will start quick review of the program, and then we'll walk through the step-by-step process on how to complete the application with key highlights on pitfalls to avoid, and a wrap up at the end of questions. So now I'll hand it over to Talia, who will walk you through the presentation.
Hi, Scano. Good afternoon. Good morning to those if you're joining us from the West Coast. My name is Talia Bomberry, and like Patty said, I'm a bursary and scholarship officer here at Inspire. I'm super excited to present to you today the application in hopes of answering some of those questions that you might have, given that our August 1st deadline is soon approaching. If you're not familiar with us, Inspire is an Indigenous national charity that invests in the education of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis students across Canada for the long-term benefit of these individuals, their families, communities, and Canada. In partnership with Indigenous, private, and public sector stakeholders, Inspire educates, connects, and invests in Indigenous people so that they will achieve their highest potential. Inspire's Building Brighter Futures Bursary Scholarship and Awards program is made possible through the possible thanks to the generous support of individual and corporate sponsors, as well as the provincial and federal governments. Each year, hundreds of sponsors contribute, with new and renewed partnerships being established every single week. In 2024-2025, Inspire provided over $31.6 million in financial support through more than 8,800 bursaries and scholarships through the Building Brighter Futures funding model. You might hear me refer to that today as the BBF funding model, or BBF. I'm referring to the Building Brighter Futures. So you might be asking yourself, okay, so how do I access this? So in order to access our application, you'll simply go to www.inspire.ca in your web browser. At the top of the page, you will select programs and then click students. Under bursaries and scholarships, you would click learn more, and then you will find the bursary or scholarship that you want to apply for and click apply now. So looking for that, we're going to have Patty put that into the Q&A chat for you so that you can refer to that link there on how to apply. Once you get to that page, you're going to be asked to create an account or sign in. We do recommend writing down your login information, as applications are copied and cloned each year. If you forget your login information, don't worry, you can retrieve your password online or contact one of our team to recover your account. It's always a good idea to save your login information because you will need it to upload your banking information should you be successful in receiving an award, as well as submitting a thank you letter, video, or photo. We also recommend using an email address that you'll have long-term access to. Inspire has implemented a multi-factor authentication process to protect the integrity of our records, as well as the system will not allow submissions if it detects multiple accounts or duplicate applications. So we do stress that you don't make duplicate accounts, because then you'll have to reach out to us in order to merge those accounts, and it just kind of creates a little bit of barriers to getting to the application, the more accounts that you do create. We do suggest, again, using those email addresses that you're going to have long-term access to, because sometimes what we see is, some students might, if they're attending a 2-year college program, they might use that email address that is from that institution. And then once they complete that program, they might decide, okay, well, I want to do my bachelor's degree, and then they move on to another institution. So then they don't have that login information no longer, because they're no longer enrolled or have access to that. So that's why we do stress using that email that you're going to have access to. So now we're going to walk through the application process and what you can expect to see along the way. The application consists of 12 brief sections covering information about you, your educational journey, and the associated costs. Now, yes, the application might seem a little bit daunting, but I will say that you can, complete so much of it, and then you can go back in, save it, go back into the account to finish it. So if it does seem a little bit overwhelming to you at the initial, once you get in there, that's okay. You can always go back to it. But I do want you to think about this. The average award through Inspire is about $3,600. So if it takes you 1 hour to complete the application, that's $60 per minute. So the first section of the application is going to ask you for your personal contact information and your Indigenous affiliation details. You will also need to upload your proof of Indigenous registration in this section before it allows you to move forward with your application. So you might have, if you don't have, maybe your Indigenous affiliation details are expired, we can accept letters on letterhead outlining your personal information to verify your Indigenous ancestry. It just has to make sure that it includes this information. So we will also be asking you about your educational information. And this includes whether you're studying inside or outside of Canada, the details of previous programs, and your current program information applied for this academic year. So if you are studying outside of Canada, you do have to be, in order to be eligible, you do have to be studying at a graduate level. So if you're doing a diploma program or a bachelor or undergrad program, something like that outside of Canada, those applications wouldn't be eligible for an award through Inspire. So in this next section, you'll indicate what your living situation is. So whether you live independently with your parents or with a partner, you'll specify also how many dependents you may have, including any of those that are under the age of 12. And then this information helps to determine what your financial need may be. So for this section, for those students that maybe are moving away to school, but your primary address is still at home, but you are, moving away from school, you would technically be considered single independent. This is an example because you are moving away from home for that academic year. So in this next step, this is where you will list any other kind of bursaries, scholarships, or awards that you may have applied for this academic year, for the fall 2026, winter 2027, including that award name, amount, and status. You'll also enter any other kind of student loan information and indicate whether you're working for the applied academic year. So in this section, what sometimes we see students put in is if they're getting any kind of sponsorship from their Indigenous organization. This isn't the step where you would put that information in. It's not going to be until the following step, and we'll get to that in the next slide. I just want to stress that you wouldn't put that if you were getting something from your Indigenous organization, you wouldn't put it in this section. Or if you received an award from us, from Inspire, for last academic year, you wouldn't put that in here as well. Okay, so when we go into this section, would be step 7, we're going to be looking at the budget section. So essentially here, we're going to be looking at what your school length is going to be. So in order to be eligible for awards as well, it's under our policy that if you are taking college or university, they do have to be a minimum of 4 months in length, and trades are 4 weeks in length. So just please keep that in mind. So the academic year for the 26-27 runs from September 2026 to August 2027. So this is where you're going to put in whether or not you're going fall, winter, spring, and summer of next year. That's where you're going to be putting that information in. So we're also going to be looking at this is the section if you are being sponsored by your First Nations Inuit Métis organization. So you would just click yes, and then you input any of those amounts. If you have applied but you haven't heard back from them, there is a drop down in that section where you can just put application pending. You wouldn't know those amounts if you haven't been approved yet, so you wouldn't put any of those amounts in. So what we're also looking for in this section as well is any kind of yearly parental support towards expenses. So this is any kind of support that you are receiving from your parents. We do sometimes see maybe more mature students put a number in here because it's what they contribute to their child's educational journey. That's not what we're looking for. It's what your parents are contributing to your academic year. And then we're also looking for your monthly income. So are you receiving any kind of government funding, any other income, or a registered education savings plan? If so, this is where you would put that amount. So in section 6, if you indicated that you were working, this is where you would put that monthly amount in. And it also asks if you do indicate that you're living with a spouse and that's your family status, it would ask for your spouse's income as well. And we are looking for monthly amounts. Sometimes what we see is students put in yearly amounts, and so that's automatically going to make their income and financial need very low. And so we just want to stress that these are monthly amounts that we are looking for. So moving on to step 8, we're now going to take a look at what your expenses are. So we're going to be looking at, you're going to be indicating what kind of tuition that you're going to be paying. So in this section as well, if your tuition is more than what maybe your sponsorship from your Indigenous organization has put, you would put those actual amounts in for the tuition. So this is where you're also going to put books, supplies, and fees. And if you have a yearly relocation fee, so this is for students that are relocating over 100 kilometers from the current school residence. And Inspire, we will consider a relocation cost once per diploma or degree. So this isn't something that you're going to be able to put in a cost that you would be putting in every year over, say, a 4-year bachelor's degree. However, if you do change institutions and you choose to do your master's degree, you could put in another yearly relocation, but it's only one per program, and the maximum claim is $2,000. So any kind of professional attire we can take into consideration as well. So that's for anything that's required to be purchased for your educational program. So for instance, that could be medical students, those that are in trades, anything where you're going to need things that are above and beyond the books and supplies. So this is also where you're going to put in your transportation costs. And we look at transportation costs in this section as referring to gas, bus, and air costs for 2 visits to your home community per academic year. So your transportation as a whole and monthly living expenses is already calculated based on provincial standards automatically by the database. So that's based on your address that you input. So this section is just inputting 2 trips to your home community. So say for instance, your home Indigenous community is in BC and you you go to school in Ontario, that's where you would put in those 2 round trips per year into there. So the only monthly expenses that you can put in the application is if you are paying insurance. So whether that's for a vehicle, home, renter's insurance, health insurance, and it's a monthly amount. A lot of times we do see students putting in the yearly amount. And so we just have to confirm, if those amounts are really high, we may ask you to break down that for those amounts. And then if you do have dependents, this is where you can put in your childcare expenses. And then that goes back to making sure that you have the correct information in step 5, indicating that you have dependents in your care. And then if they are under a certain age where they might require childcare, that's where we can cross-reference that information. So this is how your monthly expenses are calculated. So we look at the total income that you have indicated that you're receiving. So whether that's student loans, you got any bursaries, any kind of monthly funding, less the total expenses. So that one amount that's auto-calculated for your living expenses based upon the provincial standards with your address put in, along with the tuition, transportation fees, books and supplies. That's what equals your financial need. So it is an auto-calculated number by our database. And if you don't have a financial need, you wouldn't be eligible for an award because the financial need should show a negative number in order to be eligible. If you do have questions and you're not seeing a negative number, you can reach out to us for some one-on-one support, and maybe we can go over the budget with you, one of the bursary and scholarship officers, just to make sure that we have all of the correct and accurate information in your application to make sure that you're going forward with the strongest application that is there. So moving on to community participation. Now, this is one important piece to the application that we do see students don't always complete. And this is one area that your application is scored on. So this is quite important because this is sometimes there are things that you can't change in terms of, maybe you might have had a bad year last year because, personal things might have happened. So your marks weren't that high. So your score in your marks might be a little bit lower. And then your financial need might not be that great. So it might be a little bit lower. And where you can really increase your score is just to ensure that you're filling out this in step number 9 is your community participation. Now, this is how have you given back in some way over the past 5 years and how long? This community participation isn't necessarily, it's not necessarily like formal volunteer work. This can be how do you contribute? Do you, some examples could be, but aren't limited to, are you a classroom monitor? Do you organize study groups within your institution? Do you attend and play sports in your community? Do you attend ceremony, community events? Do you volunteer or coach for any kind of family members? Or do you provide childcare or transportation for family members or elder care? Do you help out? Essentially, we're looking for anything that you are doing without any kind of monetary value. Are you involved in any clubs? It could be a whole range of things. And we really want to stress that you complete this section because it does impact the score of your overall application. So these are just some additional application questions that are included in the application. So, are you a veteran or were you related to one? Can you speak other languages? Do you speak French? Are you the first generation in your family to attend post-secondary? Just trying to get a better idea and picture as to, your educational journey and what contributes to that. So in section 11, it's your letter of introduction. So this is introducing yourself to us. Tell us about you, your community, why you decided to pursue a post-secondary education in your field of study, what maybe some challenges and successes that you'll be building from in the future, and what are your plans after you graduate from post-secondary, and do you participate or give back in some way, or if you're not able to, you know, what limits that or what creates those barriers to you being able to contribute. So this is a important section of this presentation right now, because now we're going to be going into what's required of you in order to complete the application. So you do need to submit a proof of enrollment, and you do need to submit your grades. And so right now we do understand that some institutions, maybe your registration's not available or you can't register right now. That's okay. Once you are able to register, you can provide that information to us. So that could look like a screenshot of your timetable if you have one, or you could also get a letter from your institution on letterhead to verify that, you know, you're enrolled full-time for the fall 2026, winter 2027 academic year. And then so for your grades, we're looking for your last completed academic year. So for those who are ongoing, we would be looking for your 25-26 academic grades. However, we do understand that, you know, maybe you've taken some time away from education and you're just now coming back. Maybe the last year that you've attended was in 2008, 2009. Those would be the marks that we're looking for. And then for those coming in from grade 12 that have just graduated, we would be looking for your final grade 12 marks for semester 1 and 2. So what's really important in here is that each document needs to contain your name, your institution name, and the academic term needs to be clearly visible on each document. So if it's not on each document, you'll automatically get a letter of incomplete, because we need to see and verify that it's your information on each document. So just reiterating, the information that you're going to need is your Indigenous registration, your proof of enrollment, and your grades. So these are just some examples of your proof of Indigenous registration. So we do need the front and back of your First Nations, Inuit, or Métis card. We do understand, you know, sometimes maybe if your First Nations card is expired or you're in that process, but the organization can write you a letter on letterhead to verify that information of your registry, then we would accept that. Those types of letters are valid for 1 year, and then we would be asking you to be providing that First Nations, Inuit, or Métis card. So these are some examples of a proof of enrollment that we're looking for. And so in one section, you can see we have the course schedule, you can see the student's name, you can see the institution and the courses that they are registered in. You also see the week. So I can see that that is the fall semester or the winter semester, but we are looking for the fall semester right now. And then some institutions do provide letters of enrollment for students. So if you're unsure about that, you can contact your institution and maybe reach out to your Indigenous services support that you do have with your institution there. Again, each document needs to contain your name, the school's name, and the academic term needs to be clearly visible. So, and then here's some examples of some marks. So we would be looking for, you know, these are final grade 12 marks. Sometimes we do see students that come in with only their semester one or midterm marks, we do need to see those final marks for the grade 12 semesters. And anything that was, say if it's for last year and it says in progress, we're likely going to be emailing you back to say, hey, this mark is in progress. We need to see final marks. And those are just some examples right there again. Okay. So we're going to talk about matching. So how we match students to awards is that well, first of all, we'll talk about your jury score and how your application is scored. So your application is scored in 3 areas. It's high academic achievement, financial need, and community involvement. These are all scored from 1 to 5. So that's how we get your overall number of your application. And the minimum score that you do need to be considered for awards is an 8. So keep that in mind. If, maybe you're not reaching that with your academic need, or sorry, your academic achievement and your financial need, that's where that community participation or community involvement comes in, is really important. So we do get sponsor agreements, and they outline the criteria of students that they might be looking for. Now, we do have some criteria that are very open, but we also have criteria that's very specific. So we do have donors that, say, for instance, are looking for students from a specific Indigenous organization in a specific province and want them to be attending specific institutions. And some are very open. And so that's why it's important that you have the accurate information in your application in terms of what major field of study you're in, where you're going, and ensuring that all the information is accurate in terms of your Indigenous ancestries in there as well, because that sponsor agreement gets put into the criteria into our database. And then based off the information that you put in your applications, that's how we match students to sponsor awards. So these are some important things to keep in mind. So you are only eligible to apply once per academic year. So that being said, if you were to complete your application now for the August 1st deadline, and say maybe you weren't successful in that first round of matching, your application would stay live and active for the following 2 deadlines of November the 1st and February 1st. So you don't have to keep reapplying. That one application remains active for that full academic year. So part-time studies, those funding opportunities are very limited with Inspire. And unfortunately, not all applications are successful in receiving funds. It does not cover all full educational costs, so we are not a funding source. And any funds received through Inspire can typically be used at your discretion. So, we're not asking for receipts on how you spent, if you were successful. We're not asking for receipts. That's if you're matched to an award and successful. That's up to you in terms of how you want to spend that. And we're always available for any kind of one-on-one support from Inspire staff. And that is, we'll have that contact information provided at the end, but you can always email us, you can give us a call. We do experience very high times of volume of calls and emails, so sometimes it does take some time to get back to you, just because we're dealing with thousands of applications, especially at this time of year with the August 1st deadline coming up. So applicants, you can apply every year. So say if, for instance, you're matched in that February 1st deadline and you receive an award in March of that academic year, once the new application opens in May for that September, you would still be eligible to make that application for that following September, because it's now a new academic year. What I will say as well, applications are cloned for the following academic year each year. So I know that it might take a long time because there's so many sections. However, say for instance, you're going into your first of a 4-year program, that application will be cloned over every year and you only have to make minor changes in terms of, updating your educational information. If there's any changes to your finances, your address or things like that, you wouldn't have to start from scratch or create a whole new one. That application would already be cloned. Again, these are our application deadlines. So that August 1st deadline is coming up and it's coming up quickly. So we do encourage students to apply as soon as you can, but we do, if you're not able to, we do have 2 following application deadlines coming up of November 1st and February 1st if you miss that August 1st deadline. So these are some other additional award opportunities. So we do have a high school award, and that's called the Horatio Alger Indigenous Achievement Scholarship. So this is open to Canadian, First Nations, Inuit, and Métis students, and these are students whose home Indigenous communities are in the Northwest Yukon Territories or Nunavut. You have to be enrolled full-time in high school within Canada, and you have to be in your final year of high school and starting a 4-year post-secondary program within Canada full-time in September. So that application also ends on August the 1st. So I would encourage any students that meet that criteria to make that application as soon as you can. And if you have more information on that, or if you would like more information, we'll provide that contact information in there as well. So we do also have the Roberta Jameson Emergency Fund for Indigenous students. The end date for this is February the 1st. And this is for emergency situations that, but not limited to short-term displacement caused by physical factors, such as maybe a house fire, a natural disaster, or maybe you need to travel home for family emergencies or death, illness, anything that could require immediate medical treatment for themselves or for your dependent, injury, or theft. The one thing that we do stress about this fund, though, is that any requests related to education, such as tuition, exam fees, etc., or cost of living, wouldn't meet the intent of the program. So this is our contact information here. If you do have any kind of questions or you want any kind of one-on-one support, because you're unsure about things and you're just, or maybe you're confused, we do offer that one-on-one support if you reach out to education@inspire.ca, or you can reach out to any one of the bursary and scholarship officers here.
Thank you so much,
Okay.
Talia. That was fabulous. Great information. I hope everybody finds that information helpful when they're completing their applications. We're going to get to the question and answer period. So if you have any questions, along the top bar there, it may show the question at Q&A, but it also may have to click on the 3 dots and go to the Q&A in order to put your question in. But we do have a few questions in here, so I'll just read those to Talia and then she can answer them for us.
Okay.
All right. So the first one is, can additional expenses, example, sports related or health related expenses not included in education, be covered by VBF?
No, they cannot. So anything that is included in your expenses is already auto-calculated in the database. So that would be rent, transportation, groceries. That's already auto-calculated that. And this is the provincial standards that student loans use as well. And so that's the only area that is already calculated. There's no room in the application to add those other expenses in.
Next question is, what if a student's First Nation has not confirmed successful applications for their PSC program? Can I still apply for the August 1st deadline?
You can still apply for the August 1st deadline. If you can't confirm the registration, your application would just stay in a in an incomplete state. And then once you can provide that proof of registration, then you would be able to upload that and submit it to your application. So yes, we do understand that you might not make that August 1st deadline, but we do have those other deadlines throughout the year.
So this one is about registration at the school. So registration for full-time students opens August 5th for Georgian College. Do students have to wait until to apply for the next application November 1st? I think you already mentioned this, but I just wanted to ask again.
Yeah, so I would suggest to you, like, I would suggest to students that if you can't register until, say, for instance, August 5th, still make that application for August 1st, because then we do have a flexible documentation deadline. So if you do meet that application, so say if you know, complete that application this week, and then you get an email from us saying, your application's incomplete, please provide it when you can. There is an August 15th deadline for the documentation, not the application, the documentation. So, and that is a little flexible. So if you are able to register until August the 5th, as long as you have your application in before August 1st, we can still process it, and hopefully, you still meet that documentation deadline date after that August 1st. I hope that was clear.
Okay, another question.
Yeah.
My card expires this month, but I submitted for renewal. Do I still need a letter to use an update if I win?
So if your Indigenous proof of Indigenous ancestry expires this month, I would still suggest and encourage you to apply, and you just would provide that updated card as soon as you can.
How strict is the number of characters in each of the question boxes?
I cannot confirm that right now. But if you want to leave your contact information in the question and answer, we can get back to you on that. I want to say it's maybe the characters might be around 200.
So that's all the questions that we have right now in the question and answer. Unless other people have. Oh, wait, one more.
Okay.
Is selection first come, first serve? I completed my application last month and have an email that says do not log back into your completed application, as it will change back to submitted status and will go to the bottom of the submitted applications. I don't know about this information session until last week. So I may want to go back in and make some changes, but I don't want to hurt my chances by logging back in again.
So I would suggest to reaching out to education@inspire.ca, because our education mailbox is monitored daily. And if you have questions, and because your application's complete, maybe we can do a phone call for a one-on-one to go over those details that you may want to change. So definitely reach out to education@inspire.ca, and we can have something arranged for you.
Another question is, I have submitted my application. I forgot to add some of my volunteer work. Can I go back and edit?
You can't go back and edit, but you can provide that information to education@inspire.ca, and we can go in and put that information in your application for you. You just have to indicate the activities and the details, a description of, the community involvement that you did complete, and make sure that you include how many hours that was.
I think that's it for our questions. Thank you, everyone, so much for joining us today. And like Tally said, if you have any questions or concerns, our contact information is in the chat and Q&A. Feel free to email us or call, and we can definitely help in any way we can.
Yes, for sure. Many Nyawas for attending with us today. And like Patty said, please reach out to us if you need to. And best of luck to you for this academic year.